Blog Talk Radio.
All right, race fans, y'all know what time it is. It's Race Chat Live. Glad to have y'all on board here tonight. It is a beautiful, hot Tuesday night down here in the state of Mississippi. Hopefully, wherever you're at, you're staying cool under the air conditioner. We're going to try to do that ourselves. We've got a big show planned here tonight. Let me get my partner in crime on here in just a few minutes, Taz Taylor. Of course, coming off a wild weekend at NashVegas, of course, Nashville Super Speedway, where Joey Logano, I just, kind of fell in his lap, right? He is the winner from this past weekend's race. It took five overtimes to get him to victory lane. And I don't think that he was anywhere near victory lane when the first overtime started. It was definitely an interesting race. Of course, all over the news media in NASCAR, whether it be NASCAR radio or the popular podcast or Bubba Clear, even Actions Detrimental. It's been all about, did we do too many overtimes? Guys, I don't know if y'all remember what it was like for a race to end under caution, but I definitely don't want to go back to that, right? I mean, when we look back at the Dale Earnhardt victory, when he crosses the checkered flag, he was under caution, man. Did Dale Earnhardt really win the Daytona 500, right? In this day and era, he would not have unless, of course, it was the last lap. That's the only time that we end a race under caution. If you put limits on how many cautions, well, you might have a guy like, I don't know, let's just use his name, Kevin Harvick. No, Justin Haley, right? Justin Haley or something, maybe he's got a 7th place finish coming up, and he knows that all he's got to do is wreck the guy in front of him, and he's going to be guaranteed that spot because he's going to run out of gas if it goes one more time. Look, it'll be a manipulation of the race. Then you'll have people literally trying to wreck somebody to end the race. I think that NASCAR has done it right. We very rarely have had situations where we went into 5 overtimes. I believe that was the record set this past Sunday in the NASCAR Cup Series. I don't remember any other races going, and I know for a fact that hasn't in the Cup Series. I think the Truck Series may have had a few more back, I believe, at a St. Louis race a few years ago or whatever. So, it doesn't happen all the time. I thought it was probably, if you take the first half of the race, and I would say before the hour and a half red flag, I think that was a pretty boring race. But when we got back out there, it just seemed like a different race going on the racetrack. It seemed more hurried. Drivers seemed to anticipate that the end was near, and just hustled a little bit harder. And we got to see some true action there. I believe from the get-go that Nashville was going to bring us a lot of action, and it did. It did not disappoint. For that track to have been, dormant for so long, it's wild that we've, it's great that we've gone out as a league, as NASCAR itself, and gone to these places in the Cup Series like St. Louis, like Nashville Super Speedway, and Road America a couple of years ago, and I believe that, there's other racetracks that we will go back to or go to for the first time. North Wilkesboro, of course, being the first on that list, Rockingham maybe. So without further ado, I'd like to bring home my co-host. He's already been plugged in. He's just sitting here waiting on his proper introduction, and the proper introduction he deserves. Mr. Taz Taylor, welcome to the show, my friend. Glad to have you on board. Of course, you're not late. I'm just late bringing you on.
I try to be on time.
Yes, you do. And my apologies for last week, race fans, and and my fellow colleague. I had a coming to Jesus moment the next day where I really felt really bad that I left my colleague and my friend hanging there. You know, it takes so much show prep, and believe it or not, Taz Taylor and I very rarely do any pre-show. What is it called? Preposition or something? We don't really have any pre-show talk. We basically know what we're bringing to the table each week because we're going to talk about the hottest topics in motorsports. And that's really easy most of the time to filter out what is really hot topics and what's not. They have a whole segment on NASCAR radio, right, Taz Taylor? What's hot, what's not? Well, if it's talked about on Race Chat Live, it's probably what's has a hot topic, right?
Well, I mean, we pretty much know what we talk about because we go from, what is it? Basically, we know once, I'd say Thursday, Friday comes about, that's pretty much when our group chat kind of talks about what's going on for the weekend, what's happening during the race, and of course, you know, whatever news comes up Monday and Tuesday morning. So we pretty much base our show what the topics of discussion are from the weekend, pretty much basically what we see from what we share with each other or what we talk about during the race weekend anyway. So,
and those are the hottest topics to discuss. Like, we're not going to waste our time on things that just don't have any relevance, right? And I think one of the things that that's going to come up to issue tonight that I believe is one of the hottest topics right now is the $50,000 fine given to Carson Hocevar because most people didn't even know what the hell happened.
Well, I knew it happened, and I remember seeing the replay, but I did not realize it happened under yellow. I thought it happened under green or, like, just before it became a yellow. So I think I had to go back and watch the replay of it to find out, to confirm that.
Yeah, definitely. It happened under caution. I believe it was the same caution maybe of the Ross Chastain incident, but either way, obviously Carson had a situation with Harrison Burton and tried to move him the hell out of the way, and eventually, it turned Harrison Burton around under caution. And, $50,000 fine, look, I mean, it may be big news for a guy who doesn't make very much money in the Cup Series right now, but Carson Hocevar, you talk about a guy who's on the way up versus Harrison Burton, a guy who's on the way out, right? If I'm Michael McDowell right now, the only reason why I'm even excited about going to Spire Motorsports is because of the runs that Carson Hocevar has been able to establish there since he's been in that 77 car. Obviously, Corey LaJoie has had a pretty rough year. Zane Smith coming off a second-place finish. That's if you look at the top 10 there, that kind of reminds you of a place like Daytona or Talladega, where you just, this is what's left, right? This is what's left of the
pretty much, because if you look at, if you remember towards the end of the race, regardless if it was the fourth or fifth overtime, you had Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson that would pretty much battle it out for the lead. You had Chastain in the mix. You had Kyle Busch, who had a rough go to start and then miraculously pulled through on a lucky call that he got to restart in his spot. I mean, we'll discuss that in a bit, but then you had Truex, who was kind of in the mix, So, and I think Chase Elliott was a little bit too. So, I mean, there was a mix. There was quite a few mix of drivers that were right there to get a shot at the win. But of course, you had the name of the game towards the end, as it's titled in our show, fuel mileage played the factor.
Yeah, fuel mileage did play the factor. Survival played the factor. I believe Joey Logano would not have been in a position to win had he been running up in the top 5 all day. I believe what put him in the position to win was running in the back of the pack, running half throttle. Of course, we forget that these cars are dictated by the lead pack car, and the further back you are, the less you're in the gas. And I think that a lot of that, whether it was a gallon or a half gallon, whatever Joey Logano was able to save, was only because of where he was in position. I also heard an interesting stat that they were only green flag racing for 47% of those remaining laps that he was on that pit cycle. So he also was on the same left side tires, if I'm heard right, from lap with 110 laps on those left side tires or something to that note for Joey Logano. So, look, it all kind of played into the hands of Joey Logano. We sat in our chairs and we watched Denny Hamlin with a hell of a shot to win, right? We watched Kyle Busch for a moment with a hell of a shot to win. And don't let me forget about the Kyle Busch, because I think we got something to cover there as well. We saw Ross Chastain that had a chance to win for the moment. Probably the most heartbreaking was Denny Hamlin when they were coming over the radio with Gabehart saying, look, we found many ways to lose this. To lose, this is going to be one of those here today. Like, they knew that they were beat. They knew that they had to come down pit road and get some fuel tests, Taylor. Kyle Larson had a chance to win. Kyle Larson was three of those overtime cautions. Oh, my gosh. I don't even want to get into the Kyle Larson discussion, but I hope, like hell, others are starting to see that this guy thinks that his shit don't stink. Maybe I'll just leave it at that, Dad Taylor. But it's enough to catch me off guard on my whole opinion. Anyway, so I'm going to continue on. We saw these guys with a chance to win. Next thing you know, Joey Logano's there, and you're kind of like, Chase Briscoe's on the outside, and you're like, okay, you've got a guy who's experienced and knows how to win, and you got a guy who's got one victory under his entire belt, and he's about to leave the organization and head to Joe Gibbs. His time is not now. This is Joey Logano's moment. Joey Logano capitalized. Of course, it took a little bit of fuel to help him get there. That's a lot to talk about the leader, especially when he didn't lead every single lap. He really, this time, Joey Logano only led one lap.
Well, I'm going to touch base real quick on the last two Larson cautions. So, because the first one, I'm trying to remember what happened there, but the second
he ran out of gas. The first one was where he got into chest. Huh?
You said three cautions, because I remember two of them, which I'm just about ready to mention. The first one I remember was where he ran the yellow line, knowing that the yellow line is basically the apron at that point of how they detailed that track. So he should have known about it, and he had a late push. And, well, I get he was going for the push on Hamlin, which in that case, Chris, you have to understand that is the move to make in order to get yourself around the outside line and get yourself in the race-winning position. He had it. However, he made that push a little late. And then when he decided to try to move down a bit, I don't know where he was trying to think he was going, because the apron at that track is deadly if you hit it right, like he did very slightly, sends you up the track a bit. And which, I don't know if his spotter didn't tell him that, you have a car on the outside, or if they just didn't react to that quick enough. So, I mean, that's kind of a he said, or however you want to look at it. That's pretty much how I'm going to leave it at. In terms of the fuel deal that screwed Kyle Busch, which I don't think Kyle Busch should have been in that spot anyways, but we'll get to that in a minute. That is 110% Larson and his crew's fault, because as the driver, you should have known where your fuel was at that time. However, That's also his crew's fault, because his crew chief is supposed to know this thing. some of these things that could communicate with Kyle. So I would lean it more towards Kyle, but it's a fault of the entire 5 team for the whole losing fuel and running out on the restart. They should have known, and that should have been communicated.
So Ross Chastain could go on this whole I don't give a F tour, and it becomes a tour. But Kyle Larson, week in, week out, can do whatever the hell he wants to do, drive anybody the way that he wants to drive, and nobody says a word about it. It's hypocritical. I'm surprised Ross Chastain didn't get out and want to whoop his tail, but definitely in this situation with the running out of fuel, that was just being arrogant. That was just being an arrogant ass saying, you know, I'm going to stay out here and I'm going to run out of fuel, and whatever happens, happens. Not only did you put your race in jeopardy, you put other people's races in jeopardy too, which is okay for somebody who's sitting that high up on the chart, right? The less competition there, the better, right? And so it really felt like some childish NASCAR Heat 4 move or something like that. You know, it definitely didn't feel like he was putting into respecting the other drivers, such as the crew chiefs of the 11 car and the other cars that actually went to pit road instead of deciding to run out on the speedway. So he knew when his fuel window was up, and he stayed out there and wah. Now, Kyle Busch, that guy, I don't know if they were cheering to encourage him or cheering because he wrecked. I am very confused right now where that commotion from the fans. First of all, may I say once again, Nashville had some rowdy fans, y'all. They had some rowdy fans, and they were not scared to scream, holler, and boo, okay? But that wasn't a boo for Kyle Busch. Those were cheers. And he got out and bowed as if, you know, it was almost an acknowledgement that the haters were saying, hey, we feel for you, Kyle. We know that you were almost there. We see how tough this is for you. It seems like talk about the Dale Earnhardt luck at Daytona. Holy crap. Kyle Busch has this luck for this year. And I was fearful that this very thing was going to happen last season. It just took this season for it to happen. But what Taz Taylor, as we get into our segments here tonight, what Taz Taylor do you take on the fans reacting to Kyle Busch that way? Was that nefarious? Was that a cheering him on? Where do the fans and Kyle Busch stand right now amongst likability? Is it to the point where people are really feeling sorry for him?
I don't know. I still think I'm still
ready for that one.
Sure, I'm still pretty sure he has his haters. I'm still pretty sure he does. So I'm sure the ones that were cheering were probably, and more than likely, were his haters. I don't think for a second that I do think a good portion of the fans, I would say about, I don't want to say 75-25, because then at that point I'm probably stretching it. I'd say probably about 65-35 is probably where the 65% is in favor of Kyle Busch turning him over from the villain to not, I guess you could say not the villain. I don't really want to say the hero, because I don't really think he's a hero per se. But basically making him a bad guy I'm going to use wrestling terms. 65% of them feel like they turned him from a heel to a face. And the 35% said, well, he's a heel. We're going to treat him as if he's still a heel, regardless if he's more liked now because he's not racing for Joe Gibbs and the cheating Toyotas. Is how most of these people word it, but
Toyotas.
But I think the cheers for this one are probably more of his haters in this case. I don't really know I don't know if it was a cheer for his support or what, but mind you, I don't think Kyle Busch should have restarted in the 4th spot. In all honesty, and if he had not restarted in the 4th spot, that where he spun out probably would not have happened. Or people were cheering for that because he restarted in a spot that most people thought he should not have been.
Right. I don't think that it was. I don't think that they were mocking the guy. I think that, in all honesty, people are relating to the struggle of Kyle Busch. They know that he's better than the equipment that he's driving. They know Kyle Busch is capable of winning. But if you look at the last 4 years, you definitely look since the inception of this car, this new generation car, it's not a car that fits Kyle Busch's driving abilities. And I think that it's weird. You know.
It's weird to say that because last year he had, 2 or 3 wins out of that deal?
Yeah, but you know, that's it though, right? 4 wins, I think, since this car. That car was, you know, it was a fast car from the year before with Tyler Reddick. I just wonder, you know, obviously Richard Childress Racing got $110 million in sponsorships this past season for Kyle Busch. I just hope most of that went to the race car, right? And the engineering side. It's interesting that Andy Petrie was let go from, he retired from his position amongst all the other clatter that's been going on at RCR. So, you know, obviously they believe that it's something internal, and Andy Petrie said, okay, I'm not gonna stand here and be the blame for it, or maybe he was asked to take a retirement. I'm not really sure. Most of the time when they say they retire, that means they're stepping away from the sport. So it just may have been his time to go. But, you know, there's definitely problems and issues there at RCR. And I just feel like the fans have, you know, taken a different approach to Kyle Busch now that we've seen him struggle so much. Everybody hated Dale Earnhardt. Yeah. Everybody to this day acts like Dale Earnhardt was such a freaking saint. There was half the people that loved NASCAR hated Dale Earnhardt. Tess, I'm from that era. I was an '80s baby. People hated Earnhardt. Bill Elliott was the most loved. It was Ford versus Chevy. Bill drove a Ford. Earnhardt drove a Chevy, and then it was Davey as well, like Davey Allison. Davey was Jeff Gordon before Jeff Gordon. Like, we talk about the rivalry between Gordon and Earnhardt. That didn't start with Gordon. That started with Davey. Davey was Earnhardt's first true rival outside of Darrell Waltrip, but him and Darrell were kind of on different spectrums. You know, Darrell was well before. He had been established before Earnhardt got there, you know, with Allison, Bobby Allison and such. But Davey Allison was more of like the newcomer, the one that was going to give Earnhardt a run for his money. And then they fabricated this story and allowed this cheated race car to come along with Jeff Gordon, and it changed history.
Oh, Jared came in with a popping question. Who's the most hated driver in NASCAR history?
Who is the most hated driver? Probably. You know what? I'm going to surprise him with this. He may not even know who the hell I'm talking about. I'm going to say John West Townley. And second most hated driver in NASCAR history would be Stephen Wallace. But if you're looking for the most hated popular driver, I would be on the lines of Danica Patrick or Bubba Wallace. Hard to pick which one. They both seem to get a lot of hate. Taz, answer that question. You don't leave me standing here.
Oh, most hated driver in NASCAR history. That depends on how you look at it. I definitely would say, I definitely believe Danica was up there. I don't think Danica definitely is probably the most hated, probably more hated than Bubba, but I probably maybe close to you on that one. Shucks. I don't think Kyle Busch will be the most hated, and I don't even think Denny Hamlin will be the most hated, in all honesty.
No, not at all. DW, he got nicknamed Jaws. He was not a very well-liked driver.
They are the villains that people enjoy and look for because they missed it when Tony Stewart played the guy to pretty much say however was on his mind, and Kyle Busch was basically that guy. And Kyle Busch kind of still is that same guy for the most part, and Denny Hamlin's pretty much been that same guy too because, I mean, look at his podcast. He openly vocalizes what he says, so...
Yeah, he's not afraid to say anything. I think that was the same reason why Darrell Waltrip was hated so much. He was Jaws. Like, he had no problem saying what was on his mind. Rusty Wallace was not a very well-liked driver either amongst people because Rusty whined all the time. The reason why I said Stephen Wallace is, of course, he's the son of Rusty Wallace. And it's just in some of these father-son combos, people don't feel like a certain driver deserves the respect. And Stephen was kind of a bonehead and got himself into several incidents. Now, John West Townley was there just because his daddy owned Zaxby's and could write the check. And we know that we're not going to sit here and disrespect a man who got murdered in his own house by his wife's boyfriend. But I think he kind of, you know, whatever happened with John West, it unfortunately happened, right? He wasn't a very well-liked driver. He wasn't a very good skilled driver. And I think that seems to be the note when you put the greatest of all time, hatest, the most hatest driver, the driver that has been the most disliked, I should say. I'm sorry. It would have to be probably a toss-up between Danica Patrick and Bubba Wallace. And I think probably Danica Patrick would probably get the most votes on that. Very interesting that would be a question, Jared. Hopefully we answered that to the best of our ability. Look, Bubba Wallace has a whole following, and I don't think that we should down our female followers by Danica Patrick being the butt of all the jokes. But even a lot of the women of NASCAR and the girls that followed it kind of felt that way about Danica because she was quick to show her chest, but she wasn't in a bathing suit, but she wasn't that great out on the racetrack. And I think that created a lot of animosity, a lot of there was definitely at the time Joanna Long. There's been several female drivers that probably had more talent than Danica and just wasn't able to get that kind of ride. I think Bubba Wallace, a lot of the hate from that started from a simple incident at Talladega a few years ago that got taken, misinterpreted, and used as political gain, just as another driver lost his career because of a dumb reporter that said, "Let's go, Brandon." Unfortunately, politics can have a major influence in the sports world. And, you know, I think that Bubba suffered from that political divide, and Brandon Brown suffered from that. And in the time of his most important victory, finally getting a win at Talladega gets turned into "Let's go, Brandon," which we all know is really F. Joe Biden. And that literally destroyed that guy's career. So not to fall too far off topic, of course, the question was, who is the most hated driver in NASCAR history? I would like to have a discussion one night, Taz Taylor, since we're on this most disliked, hated, whatever you want to call it. I want to sit down and find out who the greatest of all-time driver, period, is. And I think that we should have that sometime soon and discuss, maybe on a slow week, who we believe the top 5 Mount Rushmore of the greatest of all-time drivers. Because I believe that we could have a variety of drivers that could fulfill that list, and a lot of reasons why. But we don't have the time for that tonight because we have a lot of news to cover already, and only a short time to get. So let's talk about Josh Berry. It's being rumored that tomorrow they will announce Josh Berry goes to the Wood Brothers. Last week it was announced. What was announced last week? Somebody was going where?
Chase Briscoe
So Chase Briscoe to the 19.
Yeah.
Right. And now this week it's Josh Berry.
Christopher Bell accidentally in his press conference put out a little thing. Oh, I can't wait for Chase to get into 19, and he caught himself. Was like, oh shit, I wasn't supposed to say that. And then I think it was either Monday or Tuesday, around 12 p.m. or whatever. The team told Christopher Bell, guess what? You started the nonsense over the weekend in New Hampshire. You're gonna finish the job here, and he finished the job by officially announcing Chase Briscoe to the 19 car.
Well, this week is Josh Berry to the 21. And I think that has a deep significance there. This isn't just a typical fill in a seat spot. And I think a lot of people would think, well, Wood Brothers hasn't done much over the last few years. You know, they've fallen off. We are forgetting that is a fourth Penske car. And to see the captain realize that Josh Berry is a talented race car driver, it reminds me of a time that Roger Penske went and picked up another Hendrick driver. You know, I know Josh Berry spent a year with Stewart-Haas Racing. It'll be forgotten about just like Daniel Suarez was a one-time driver at Stewart-Haas Racing. Okay, we're going to forget about Stewart-Haas in a few years. We're going to forget about Daniel Suarez racing there. We're going to even forget that Josh Berry started his career there. Penske has gone and picked another Hendrick driver, another Hendrick groomed driver that he believes has the talent to become a superstar. And that says a lot about where and why Josh Berry is going to the 21 in Penske. Because I believe, Taz Taylor, that Josh Berry had the opportunity to go to Front Row Motorsports as the number one driver there. But I don't think that he necessarily thought that that's where he wanted to go. And Chase Briscoe got the call to JGR, right? So that's off the list. This is the second best place that Josh Berry could have ended up, Taz Taylor. And I know you're going to say, well, stats say completely different, Chris. Over the last few years, this has not been a top-tier ride, and we know that by our power rankings because Wood Brothers can barely stay in the top 10. I'm telling you right now, Taz Taylor, they're bringing Josh Berry into the Wood Brothers to groom him to take over a seat at Penske.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, you have no doubt about it. I mean, in all reality, Wood Brothers has not had much success since Ryan Blaney's been in. Ryan Blaney moved to Penske. You had Matt DiBenedetto, or then you had Paul Menard in the 21 car, and Paul Menard hand-selected Matt DiBenedetto to take the 21 car. And Matt DiBenedetto, and don't get me wrong, Matt DiBenedetto had some talent behind him. There was two, I would say maybe two races where he had the opportunity to win, and it slipped away from him. And it's not because of lack of talent. It was just that there was another driver that just outsmarted him. And obviously the biggest one, no, that was when he was with Levi. Never mind. Let me backtrack on that one. So either way, he had opportunities to win, regardless if it was in Levine or if it was with Wood Brothers. You know, he had a couple opportunities to win races. However, he lacked the sponsorship dollars, where Josh Berry, in this case, this will help him in the sense, you have to look at Josh Berry, what's going to benefit him on the long term. He can go to Front Row, as you said, Chris, be the number one or even the number two guy, because you have Todd Gilliland, who could possibly be the number one guy, but right now it's up in the air that Todd Gilliland, Front Row has not officially announced if Todd Gilliland will move to the 34 But more than likely, it'll be him staying in the 38, right, which means that 34 could be open if that were the case, in which we know the 34 is a little bit better of equipment than the 38, so Josh Berry could possibly compete for that number one spot. However, Josh Berry, people would think, well, why would you go to Wood Brothers? And as you said, Chris, there's that window of opportunity to go into Penske. As I had mentioned, Ryan Blaney drove for Wood Brothers, and then when Penske opened up a third car for Penske in the Cup Series, Ryan Blaney took that spot over. Now, we have to look at it this way in terms of the future for Josh Berry. Josh Berry could, in the Wood Brothers machine for a few years until Penske and Joey Logano somehow mutually part ways and Logano goes on his own direction and keeps racing. Or Josh Berry could possibly replace Austin Cindric should Cindric struggle in the next few years, because because Cindric's wins, I'm sorry, he got lucky. Yeah, he got the Daytona 500. I mean, that's basically survives that race. Daytona, Talladega.
Right. So does Michael McDowell.
Now, you also have, and then Cindric's second win, in all honesty, was because of fuel mileage problem that Ryan Blaney came short on, and Austin Cindric just happened to be the second place guy in the running when that happened. So, basically, Cindric had two lucky wins. And I don't think he would be as successful if those two lucky wins were not there. He just has not competed that well, in all honesty. He was making more noise in the Xfinity Series than he has in his short time in the Cup Series. Maybe I'm just jumping on the hate wagon for him or putting him down so much.
He was supposed to be a road course ace, right? We were expecting him to be dominant at two racetracks, and that was plate race, super speedway races, and road courses. I mean, he's in a Penske car, for crying out loud.
Exactly.
He's got the best of equipment.
And he, like I said, with the Xfinity Series, he was competing easily week in, week out for wins and top fives. You're in Penske Cup equipment, and you haven't done jack shit.
I swear, man. It just doesn't make any sense. Austin Cindric is a wasted seat right now in the showcase car at Penske Racing. So you better believe that they're going to have all eyes on what Josh Berry is able to do. You know, the question is whether or not Rodney Childers and the rest of that team goes to the 21, because the 21 seems to have its own established crew and crew chief and whatnot. So we'll see how that happens, how that goes about in the upcoming weeks, whether or not the entire team. Of course, I want to see Rodney Childers with somebody that's, that Rodney can be successful for somebody, right? So he's probably a hot commodity throughout the NASCAR garage.
He was successful for Kevin Harvick, and I'm sure when Josh Berry signed with Kevin Harvick Incorporated, it kind of helped Berry become marketable, and also for sponsorship dollars, it helped in that aspect for that side. And with him signing with Kevin Harvick Incorporated, it kind of helped Harvick work with the whole Josh Berry, Rodney Childers type of deal, because obviously Harvick has been with Childers for quite a few years, and they've had some storied success, So right. I think Childers and Berry are a good combination. And obviously it's not going to take, a driver overnight to get used to this car and used to the Cup Series competition by any stretch of the means. I mean, yeah, Josh Berry luckily last year had a few races under his belt before jumping into this car and running in the Cup Series full time this year to kind of help prep. But I think with Josh Berry in this case, he had to go from a Chevy to a Ford deal, learn how to, become marketable on the Cup side versus Xfinity, you had to go from learning the Dale Jr. Bible to now you have to learn the Kevin Harvick novel. So it's just a different toss-up.
Very good. Yeah. I like the way you worded that. That's good. I swear, man, you're amazing, Taz Taylor. I'm so grateful to have you as my weekly co-host. We've had the third guy come in and out. We've had several different third guys, but I tell you what, I don't know where the show would be right now if it wasn't for my buddy Taz Taylor here. We don't normally talk a week ahead, but this is a pretty big race, significant race coming up at Chicago, the street course. We've only been to a street race one other time, and, of course, I don't know if we'll have the same conditions this time around that we had last time. But it's very interesting coming up into this race that we have Shane Van Gisbergen. I want to talk about him for a second because obviously I think a lot of us thought last year, hey, this is a fluke, it's whatever. How in the hell did this happen? A guy comes over from Australia Supercars and he takes a victory in his very first Cup race, very first NASCAR race, period, I believe. But now here we are the next year, and Shane's sitting on 2 wins already this season in the Xfinity Series. Are we going to give him a legitimate shot to, go back-to-back, Taz Taylor? What's the hype going into Chicago with SVG, knowing that he's got some true competition to have to deal with in the Cup Series? Not counting A.J. Allmendingers. We're talking Kyle Larson, some other guys that are just really good on road course races. Is SVG the favorite? And we'll look at that here in a little bit. I know this is kind of unusual for us to go into at this time of hour, but I just really want to get the room temperature on SVG. And are we expecting a back-to-back victory here? I mean, if you watched him in the Xfinity Series, Tasso, we would be crazy not to think that this guy's going to roll into here and do it again.
So this is kind of where I've been sitting on this for quite a few days. Like, is he really the favorite? Is he not? And there was a couple times today where I look back.
We never have this.
Hold on.
I want to say this again. We never have this discussion at this time of hour. That's how important this question is to be answered, because he is one of the hottest topics in racing right now. Taz Taylor.
All right. So anyways, so I've sat on this for quite a few, and I looked at the last year's race, and I also thought about some of the road courses where track limits are more strict than others. And I know NASCAR is kind of lenient on a lot of the track limit deals in terms of how far on the how wide can you make your turns, whether if it's going into the corner or coming out of the corner. Because obviously we see times where guys literally use the rubber strips going through the corners. Sometimes you even see spots where it's grass is no longer grass after about 10, 15 laps of guys running the same consistent line. And so it makes you think now with Chicago street course, you're basically limited to wall to wall. There is no, you can make a wide extended turn for a certain corner. There is no, I'm gonna try cutting a corner the slightest bit to get an advantage on the guy in front of me, or to get around this guy. There's none of that. Again, it's wall to wall. So you have to sit here and think about what drivers can really use the limit of basically your track limits and not rely on an extended track. Well, think of it this way. Shane Van Gisbergen's background was, as Chris had mentioned, the supercars in Australia. They, just like Formula One, just like IndyCar, this series, the supercar series, when they run on road courses, because that's all they run on, let's put it that way, they have track limits. They're not like NASCAR where they're lenient on you running 800 feet out, coming out of the corner and coming back into the racing surface. They're not lenient on you cutting a corner by an inch and be okay with it. They're strict with it. You cut the corner the wrong way, boom, you're done. Or boom, you're penalized. So I think SVG has that big advantage. Yes, he's in the Colleague 16 car, but I don't want to go too far into this the hot pig deal, but AJ Allmendinger drove the 16 car last year, and he ran inside the top 10 for a way good chunk of that race. So I don't think Colleague will be slacking here. I mean, think about it also, too. Justin Haley was a front runner last year during this race, and we wrote Justin Haley off for a good chunk of last year.
Right.
So I'm sure Colleague's going to be ready to go. I'm sure Trackhouse is going to do anything they can to work with Colleague and SVG because SVG is Trackhouse's driver. So I would not be surprised if Shane Van Gisbergen goes back-to-back in the Chicago Street Course. I believe he should be a favorite to be up front and be in contention to win this race. In all honesty, I feel like this Chicago Street Course kind of falls into his old roots where he was in the Australia V8 supercars.
Right.
No, that's not a knock on.
Well,
and when I say this, I'm not saying it as like a diss to a lot of our NASCAR drivers because there are quite a few drivers that understand track limits, how far you can go, how close you can go, and there are a few drivers who ran very well last year that can also be a favorite as well.
I agree. And I think Shane Van Gisbergen is a legitimate threat for this race coming up in Chicago. He's one of four. I guess he's in the 16 car, but there's four extra cars that are going to be in the field. 37, 38, 39, 40, yes. For this particular race, I'm trying to find. AJ Allmendinger is going to be in the 13 machine. Shane Van Gisbergen is in the 16, but that's not an extra car. That's a chartered ride. Austin Hill is in the 33. Let's see. Joey Hand is in the 60. That's a RFK Racing ride, the 60 Joey Hand.
Yep.
Ford development driver. Josh Bilicki is going to be in the 66. That's, I believe, a Carl Long owned car. As a matter of fact, I believe they got reported for being the slowest Cup car ever in the history of the next gen car. I'm not no knock to Carl Long. I know he does the best he can, but I just don't really understand where they're going, why that car is even there. To be honest with you, I just don't get it. So that seems to be the four extra rides that are here. 40-car field. We don't normally see a 40-car field. That's the largest field that we can have in the NASCAR Cup Series. So it looks like all those spots will be filled for qualifying. Of course, not the 41st car. And there's several drivers I'd love to see participate in this one race deal before it goes away. And those drivers are, like a Joseph Newgarden from IndyCar, maybe. Huh?
I was waiting for
What did you laugh about?
Up.
Why? Why did you know I got a hard on for Newgarden?
No, I was waiting for Joseph Newgarden because I heard rumors that he wanted to drive a NASCAR Cup car for one race, and I feel like Chicago would be a good one for him. Either that or Indy.
Right. I would love to see a Helio Castroneves. Maybe a Formula One driver. Maybe
Don
Lewis
Hawk still owes him a NASCAR Cup ride.
Yeah, I mean, somebody, man. I want to see, the best of the best, right? I want to see Travis Pastrana. Give some of these guys that, are from the different salons of racing and bring them in for this road course, for this street course race, because I think that in the end, it's even for everybody. We could see Shane Van Gisbergen showed last year that if a talented enough race car driver, if you're talented enough, you can get in these machines and roll. Maybe not necessarily at an oval racetrack, but at a racetrack that's similar to the style racing that they are used to. Most definitely they can be competitive, and even in Shane Van Gisbergen become a winner, right? So, I want to see that opportunity as long as we have Chicago on the list and race here at a street course. If we leave Chicago, I think I want a street course, right? I enjoyed last year's race. I think I'm going to enjoy this year's race. I wouldn't be surprised to go down to Miami or Las Vegas or even New York City. I'm waiting to have a day in New York City, whether it be at Yankee Stadium or in the streets of New York. I would love to see some kind of NASCAR race show up there in the big city, the Big Apple. I think that is as it was to get ourselves in L.A., it's very important that we get ourselves in Chicago, but it's also very important that we have something in the metro center of America, New York City. I'm a huge proponent. I thought that the Long Island racetrack several years ago, probably 15 years ago, was going to be built, and we were going to have NASCAR racing in one of the major networks of America, but that did not happen. I believe NASCAR owns land up there, but the track never got built. Look, I'm excited about the Chicago race. I put it here in the hot topics section. There was a certain scene from last year of them crossing over the street and seeing the people in the background in the trolley system and the people passing. They didn't even care that there was a NASCAR race. It just reminded me of something out of a video game, and to see that in real life is an image that will forever be instilled in my head. How about let's do a street race in San Francisco, right? Down the big hill, right? Watch the. We thought that Tesla caught some air on that thing. Wait a minute, did I say on that thing? I better not. I better watch what I'm saying there, right? Damn.
My Lord.
Oh man. All right, so no hot tours around here. Matter of fact, that's something. A guy got fired in NASCAR because he used that as a meme. How ridiculous and insensitive people have to be. How sensitive
from
people have
JD
to be in order to make a. Yeah, really. The only person that was probably offended was the JD himself. So I think everybody else was pretty cool with it. Yeah, we said something about Joseph Newgarden. He did say something about being interested in running a NASCAR race course. He was at Nashville this past weekend. He was fresh on my mind. There is a possibility. I did hear in other news that's probably not so important. Luke Combs was supposed to drive the pace car, but Luke Combs did not know how to drive a standard. So for all of you big Luke Combs fans, he's not even a real man. He doesn't know how to drive a stick. So how about that? Did you hear that, Taz Taylor? Do you know how to drive a stick, Taz?
No, I didn't hear it. I did not hear that.
Do you know how to drive a standard, Taz? Let's be truthful here, sir.
I did back when I was learning how to drive, and then I haven't drove a stick since. However,
so you have driven. It's like riding a bicycle. Once you do it, you go 15 years without ever driving it. You're going to saw it the first time, and then after that, you got it.
Yeah, you have to give me a refresher course.
Oh, okay. Well, go out and drive you a standard, brother. Don't let your man card be revoked, okay? Because Luke Combs' man card, in my terms, got revoked. And maybe our man card thing has gone way too far, and we are just coming out of celebrating Pride Month, so I do need to be very careful where I go with that. But so Joseph Newgarden, blah 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 blah. All right. Any other? Oh, how about Hooters, man? Hooters, man. Restaurants are in big trouble, brother. Restaurants are in big trouble right now, and if you've got stocks in any of these restaurants or delivery services or anything to that nature, you might want to start shifting over to oil and probably electric companies, because you're fixing to lose your ass on any publicly traded restaurant and or delivery service. Because look, guys, our economy, I don't know if y'all realize it or not up in upstate New York, but it's very it's when you see 9-year-olds picking cans up on the side of the road around the state of Mississippi, I think you know that there's a problem, right? Most of the time, those cans are left for crackheads and the less fortunate. These days, mom's standing out beside the minivan. These kids are out there picking up cans out of the ditch line all along the interstate. So things are getting pretty rough down here. They have to be getting rough up there as well, Taz Taylor. It's just money. People are running out of money, and Hooters, that is unfortunately, their way of business. Years ago, they sold themselves for women in some tight clothes and big boobs, and it's hard to find those types of people to work for tip money these days when they have OnlyFans and all these other ways of making an extravagant amount of money to pay their way through college. And Hooters is on the wayside of that test. Did I say that elegantly? I'm tiptoeing here. Coming out of the Gay Pride Month, I feel like we probably needed to be a little bit more twinkle toes. So did I glide through that just right?
I think you did it pretty well.
Well, Astroglide is a hell of a lubricant. Let's see. All right. So Hooters is off the car at Hendrick Motorsports.
Oh my God. We're gonna get in trouble at some point with some little hater.
Yeah,
that guy said that little thing.
Oh man! Let's get back focused. So we're running really on time. So right now, Kyle Larson sets at the top of the Cup standings. He's got 3 wins. A guy who took a race off is sitting at the top of the Cup standings. Isn't that crazy? Kyle Larson has 3 wins. Denny Hamlin has 3 wins. Christopher Bell has 3 wins. William Byron has 3 wins. So we've always had this little phrase around here, the Big Three. The Big Three now kind of looks like the Big Four. Taylor. Outside of that top 4 is Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, and Ryan Blaney, all with 1 win. Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Daniel Suarez, Austin Cindric, all have 1 win. Obviously, the top 4 drivers have established themselves as the front runners in the Cup Championship. I believe we'll take 2 out of these 4 to the championship. I'm not sure that all 4 will actually make it to Phoenix. If you were to just look at that list right now, Taz Taylor, and we talked about Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and William Byron, if you were to choose 2 right now and say that those 2 guys were going to be for sure in Arizona at Phoenix for the last race of the season, racing for a championship, what 2 drivers would you choose and why?
Let's see. I would have to look at my biggest concern concerned, in all honesty, I think right now, oh, geez, I could see 3 out of the 4, but if I literally had to pick 2, geez, good Lord.
Yeah, it's a tough one. That's a tough question.
In all honesty, I have to write off Denny Hamlin.
Right. Okay. Denny's wrote off. Now write off another
Denny I have to write off because there are 2 road courses in the playoffs, and Denny Hamlin is not a road course racer, so he could be an early out or struggle in a round of 8. That leaves me down to William Byron. Or leaves me down to Byron, Bell, and Larson. I'm going to have to come down to I think if these 2 drivers can at least get to the round of 8, both of them will get to Phoenix, and that's Larson and Bell.
I knew you were going to say that. I can't compete with you. I can't argue with you. I can't have a rebuttal to anything that you said here because somehow or another, Taz Taylor, it took an extra minute, but you eliminated the 2 that I would have eliminated, and you even brought something to the table that I didn't think about, which was I figured Denny Hamlin would choke to choke, right? But you gave a reason for Denny Hamlin to choke. It's the 2 road courses that are in the playoffs. That's great. And William Byron, we know William Byron. He's a really good driver, but the one problem with William Byron is consistency. We don't necessarily get the same William Byron week in, week out. What is your take on that?
Right.
What is your finishing statement?
So I kind of looked at each round of this deal before Phoenix, trying to figure out which 2 of these drivers. I think Byron could put in a good argument for being a 3rd driver out of those 4 to make it to Phoenix. Obviously, I've made my case for Denny Hamlin. There's Watkins Glen in the round of 16, and then you have the Charlotte Roval in the round of 12. As I mentioned, Hamlin sucks at road courses, so I think he could either be an early out after the round of 12, or he may be struggling going into the round of 8. Then I look at Bell, Larson, and Byron. All 3 of those drivers should be all right for the round of 16 because, points-wise, they should be all right for that. Round of 12, I know Larson can make his case along with Bell to get 2 out of those 3 races to go their way with Kansas and the Charlotte Roval. Byron, the only race I can confidently say he would be good at would be Kansas, and that's kind of where the inconsistency comes into play.
Right.
But like I said, when I put Larson, Bell, and Byron into the round of 8, this is where 2 of the 3 tracks easily play into question here. Las Vegas could play right into Bell and Larson's favor because of how that track races. I'm not saying Byron sucks at this track because he could very well be a contender there. Homestead, Miami, all 3 of them could make a good argumentative case. However, Bell and Larson stick up more than Byron. Then it comes down to Martinsville. If push came to shove, who's going to do it? Bell has won at Martinsville before to get into the championship 4. So he was basically a lock for me in that case. So it came down to Larson and Byron. And I'm sorry, when it comes to this, I think Larson's spotter finally opened up a can of worms to freaking Larson and told him the real beef the other day, and Larson told him to pretty much F off. And Larson finally put some aggression to freaking Denny Hamlin And Hamlin wasn't entirely pleased about it for whatever goddamn reason. Because, I mean, Larson did cleaner than Hamlin did to Larson at Pocono. Let's just put it that way. I think Larson could probably put a bumper to somebody versus William Byron to try to get into the championship floor at Phoenix. Or, yeah, get him into it.
Yeah.
I think a spark got lit under Kyle Larson after his spotter called him out and told him, look, you're being a softie. It's time for you to stop being soft and you know, you want to run better, you want to compete for wins, and start being more aggressive and stop being a little chicken shiznit.
Yeah, no doubt. And look, I mean, I think Kyle Larson could be his own worst enemy coming down to the fold, but being that he is the driver that he is, and being that the competition between him and Christopher Bale, I thought that would be the rivalry, right? Christopher Bale and Kyle Larson, not Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. Obviously, Denny Hamlin feels that his competitive advantage with Kyle Larson is to basically schoolyard bully him. Will Larson bite back again? I don't know. You know, we'll have to wait and see, because Larson's not going to fight you outside of the race car. But we could see his mind getting juggled and jiggled enough to where he does something that he might regret later by using the race car in some type of aggression. I believe that would be how Kyle Larson handles that. And it's being encouraged by his crew, as you said, with the spotter coming across and saying, hey, you know, he's doing this to you because you let it happen. You know, I can see that on both sides. But given the experience and given that if you bet against Bell the last 2 years, you screwed up there. It's hard to bet against Bell again for this one. Though I do believe that Denny Hamlin has the most legitimate chance ever at winning a Cup championship this year, it's still too iffy to throw him in as a definite contender. Let's talk about the latter part there of the standings. You know, this year we have only had 11 different winners. We're 7 races to go. That could clearly change. We could get into the 18th different winners of the year. If each race we have a different winner, right? But as these races click off, there will be certain drivers that can feel a little bit better about their breathing room and being able to make the chase, the playoffs. That cutoff line seems to be right there in 11th, where Martin Truex Jr. is 73 points behind 11th place. So Martin Truex, Ty Gibbs are separated about 70 points between those two. Ty Gibbs is in a tight battle between Ross Chastain, Chris Buescher, and Alex Bowman. Ty Gibbs has 146 points. He's negative 146, Alex Bowman is negative 165. Now, you get to 17th and 18th, and it kind of broadens this up out. Bubba Wallace is 216 points out from first place, but somewhere about, 35 and 16 is about 51 points separate Bubba Wallace and Alex Bowman. Now, that's almost an entire race separates those two drivers. Now, the problem with that is if one of these drivers below the cutoff line from 17th to 30th, you know, if one of these drivers picks up a win, we're going to start clicking off like the Alex Bowman, like the Chris Buescher, or possibly the Ross Chastain. Now, give it be, any of these guys can win during the next 7 races, and they, too, will lock themselves in. But let's speak hypothetically as we're getting into the closing minutes of the show. Hypothetically, who's going to be in and who's going to be out, Taz Taylor? We're going to start with Ty Gibbs. Is he in or is he out?
Oh, shoot. In all honesty, I think he'll make it in on points. I think if they can turn their bad luck they've had in the last couple of weeks around back to where they were for quite a while, I think Ty Gibbs can make it in on points at least.
Okay. All right. So he's got 146 points outside of first. There's a 70-point difference between him and Martin Truex Jr. So there's quite a difference between those two. But Ty Gibbs is caught up in a dogfight between Chastain, Buescher, and Bowman. Ross Chastain sitting in 14th. He's the next guy on the list. Taz Taylor, what is your confidence that Ross Chastain makes it to the chase, makes it to the playoffs?
Right now, I'm going to lean. Oh, shoot. I'm trying to think. I think right now I may have to lean him on, I would say, a 51% chance he gets in.
Wow, a half and half.
I'm on a 51.
Starting,
I'm on like a 51-49.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, he's there. You know, he's got 150 points out from first. He's only 15 points back from the cutoff line. Yes, sir.
I'm looking at the playoff standings, and really, Truex is 141 above the cutoff line. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure at this point, as long as he keeps that gap, he'll lock himself in on points. Right now we have 5 drivers that are above the cutoff line based on points. And I know we have 7 races of the regular season left. So really, if Truex can keep that gap in the next 2 races, he's guaranteed. Ty Gibbs right now is basically 68 points above, so he has one race cushion to work with. So I'm okay there. Chastain currently has a 65-point cutoff, and I know the playoff standings say 66, but he has 1 playoff point to his name. So really, he's 65 above. So Chastain, he's kind of in the same boat as Ty Gibbs, but I think Gibbs kind of has a little bit more playroom, not as much, but a little bit more playroom than Chastain, because I feel like if Chastain has a bad race, that 65 could turn into like 40 or 30 real quick. And I know people will say, well, Ty Gibbs has the same boat. Well, Ty Gibbs is almost a 70, so, I mean, he kind of has a little bit of leniency in that one.
Yeah, and we're still waiting on Ty Gibbs to get that first career victory. We're waiting on Ross Chastain to get into victory lane. Chris Buescher at the hot RFK Racing. You know, who would have thought after last year's success we would be over halfway through the season, and Chris Buescher has yet to find victory lane. Is there a chance that he misses the playoffs, Taz Taylor? He's in that 15th spot. 15 and 16 seem to be the most vulnerable positions if somebody were to win outside the cutoff line and make their way in. So Shane Van Gisbergen can win the race at Chicago, and he's not going to be in the playoffs because he's not a full-time NASCAR Cup driver. So this is basically somebody who's 17th and below that runs a full-time Cup Series ride has the chance to knock off one of these guys in the top, you know, the 16th is a knockout qualifying type deal. The guy who's in 16th would be pushed down to 17th if somebody below the 17th cutoff line down below, I'm saying this all screwed up, below the cutoff line, which is 17th, if somebody were to win, these 2 positions are the most that are at jeopardy, the 15th spot and the 16th spot. Chris Buescher is in that 15th spot. Taz Taylor, are we hoping for the best for Chris Buescher? I mean, there's a legitimate chance that he does not make the playoffs.
Right now, he's not a full 60 points. He's not a full 60 points ahead of the cutoff. So, yeah, we have to play that question. However, I do believe he may have a pretty good shot of actually making the playoffs here, Chris, because, look, after Chicago, we go to Pocono, we go to Indy, we go to Richmond. Buescher has won at Richmond. We go to Michigan. Again, Buescher has won at Michigan. And we go to Daytona. Hey, 3 tracks in a row. Buescher has won at Daytona. I think Chris Buescher has those 3 races circled on that calendar. Saying that, look, guys, let me survive Chicago, let me survive Pocono, let me survive Indy. We have 3 legitimate chances to get ourselves into the playoffs or get a crap ton of points before we go to Darlington and start chewing our fingernails.
That leaves Alex Bowman, Chaz Taylor. And with us coming up to a Daytona and a Chicago where Justin Haley could very well be the winner, based off of last year's run that he had, he could have very well won that race. Todd Gillian could obviously win at Daytona. There's several drivers that could, find their way into that spot. Michael McDowell, I guess, is the guy, who's had a great year this year. He could be that 16th spot. Is there almost a 0% possibility that guy in the 16th spot is not going to make it in the next 7 races? And if that's the truth, does that mean that Alex Bowman really has to make sure that he's not in the 16th spot? I know that's a tricky question, and it's not really a question. It's more of an observation. That 16th spot is the hot spot. And more than likely, and with 7 races to go, somebody's going to win a damn race that hasn't won one yet. And it's possibly going to be somebody below that cutoff line. You've got Bubba Wallace on there. You got McDowell. You got Gillian. You got several drivers that can fit the grade and possibly win. Alex Bowman, he's in the biggest trouble in that 16 cutoff spot, but I want to know how he digs himself out of that.
Bowman and Bubba, they're 51 points separated from each other. So, Bowman could have a DNF and Bubba could have a one hell of a points day at, say, Daytona and shoot himself in the foot. In terms of other drivers, they got some work points-wise, but if there was any sort of wild card that's under the cutoff line that could sneak in there, you have McDowell for Daytona that could sneak his way through. I'm trying to look at some others here. Josh Berry could sneak one in at Richmond if he needed to. I think those are the main 2 I'm kind of looking at. So if I were Alex Bowman, I'd start finding a way to win, because at this point, you can't rely on points right now. We're possibly looking at potential of seeing 18 different winners in 36 races, because there's only 16 playoff spots, 7 races left, and only 5 people are kind of in on points. So there's kind of that window we have to look at, that even 2 drivers with 1 win, should we go this full 18 winner deal with the remaining amount of races, we could see the potential here of 2 drivers with 1 win not even make it.
Right. Would not even making the playoffs?
Yeah.
Oh, Taz, that would be like, we would have to give away the next 5 races in order for that to happen. I find that to probably be the most unlikely scenario to happen this year, and I would love to eat those words there.
But we have to look at it that way.
The 15th and 16th spot are the ones that are really up for grabs there, which is anybody's ball game. And if you're going to be in that cutoff line, the last thing that you want to be is in that 15th or 16th spot, because that is the knockout, right? That's knockout qualifying. That's you don't want to be that last guy on the bubble, and so I think those guys are significantly under more pressure than Chris Buescher and the Alex Bowman to make sure that they are not in that 15th or 16th cutoff line, because it will be at least one more winner from somebody below that cutoff line. It's almost guaranteed. It happens every year. There's too many good drivers that are sitting outside the top 17 that have a legitimate chance to put themselves. You just said, Josh Berry, Noah Gregson, the way that he's been running, Chase Briscoe, he has a legitimate chance. Bubba Wallace has a legitimate chance. Michael McDowell has a legitimate chance. Anything can happen at Daytona. Harrison Burton could find his way into the playoffs, for crying out loud.
But again, this is where you have to think about it right now. We have more races left than we have guys in on points. So yeah, you can sit here and circle the 15 6 places in points. Yeah, but there's also the possibility, and we went through this back in 2021, 2022, the first year of the next gen, where we could have possibly seen more than 16 different winners in the regular season, and somebody with one win that thought they were locked in the playoffs probably looked at themselves like, oh, crap, we need to find another win to guarantee ourselves in the playoffs, because we could be that one driver who got a win and not make ourselves into the playoffs after we sat here and thought, we're going to make the playoffs. No, you're not. We're looking into that situation right now. You have to look at every aspect of this, and this is one of them, unfortunately. And until we get down to 5 races left, which unfortunately there's 2 extra races to basically guarantee 5 drivers get in on points at this rate, there's a possible guarantee that a driver with one win can't even make it.
I got you fired up, Taz Taylor. I hate that we're already at the end of the show. We had to go there. We had to do some point standing. It's not something that we bore our listeners with all the time, but this is the right time to bring it in, because we are 7 races out, and anything can happen before we get to that playoff cutoff. As you said, there could be, legitimately 6 out of the 7 races could see different winners, and then that would put us over the threshold of a guy who thought that one win would lock him in, and we could start eliminating who that guy would probably be. And it would probably be Daniel Suarez, because I think he's somewhere really in the 20th position of points. Of course, Tyler Reddick, there's several drivers that have not gotten into victory yet that are still above the 16th cutoff line. Tyler Reddick does have a win this year, I do believe. So he is officially locked in for what we call officially. If I guess things could change. But things are definitely heating up.
That's why a lot of times when you hear reporters and TV analysts sit here and say, when you look at playoff standings, when they sit here and look at drivers who have multiple wins, pretty much saying they're locked in, that's because, they pretty much kind of are, because at that point you're not really flirting with either points, or you're not really flirting with the fact that you have one win and you have to make sure that, you stay above in the points category should there be more than 16 Cup winners in the regular season. So that's kind of where we're kind of going with this.
Yeah, so Kyle Busch, just to name some of those drivers, Bubba Wallace, Kyle Busch, Alex Bowman, Chris Buescher, Ty Gibbs, we're still waiting on him to win, Josh Berry, Todd Gillian, Carson Hocevar, the way that he's run, Zane Smith, coming off a second-place finish this past week, right? How easily his name could have been thrown in there. Eric Jones, you can't count him out. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., this guy's proven to be an upset on the card many times before. These are just guys that could possibly break into the top 16 via a win in the upcoming races. So we're gonna keep you guys in tune. We're gonna keep you up to date with who's who and where they're gonna be, and just expect a little bit more of this going on as we get closer and closer to the cutoffs, to the chase cutoff, the playoffs cutoff. Taz Taylor, it's your time to shine. Of course, we're going to go over to Taz's hot picks as I'm headed to Vegas to check out the odds. Let us know. I mean, Vegas has a little bit to play with from last year's results. And surprise, surprise, guess who Vegas has favored for the Grant Park 165 in Chicago this Sunday?
Well, let's see what we got here based on what I had to go off of. I guess kind of statistically wise from last year's results, and I did look at stage results too. So, anyways, I've listed for favorites Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, SVG. So one of those three should be up there.
Shane Van Gisbergen is at the top with a plus 600, which means, race fans, you would have to bet $600 just to win $100.
Let's see here. Contenders, I threw in Daniel Suarez, Michael McDowell, and Ty Gibbs. Underdogs, I have Justin Haley, only because I have no idea what Rick Ware Racing Equipment's going to do for him. I understand that he's had some luck on oval races, but doesn't mean he'll have that same sort of luck on road courses or street courses. He very well may. I could be wrong, but again, this is the Rick Ware kind of, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, but Rick Ware Racing in comparison to Kaulig Racing, I get that we're on the spectacle of this, at least for this year, flip a coin to see who's going to do better that week. But if you give me road course deal, I'm going to have to edge Kaulig than Rick Ware Racing. I also threw in Corey LaJoie, and I threw in AJ Allmendinger as an underdog. I know he ran pretty well here last year, but he's going to be in the Kaulig Open car, and I don't know how well that Open car is going to run. So he is a road course specialist. I think he'll do pretty well with Chicago. But again, this is an open car, so what's really under the hood to kind of help him out?
Right. Well, one thing that I felt like you really did in this list is you stayed away from the top 10. This week you really wanted to filter in some of these other guys that have legitimate efforts at this racetrack, which is good. I mean, because we know that probably Kyle Larson is going to be somewhere in the top 5 there, right? Unless he wrecks. We know Christopher Bell is going to run well there. We know Chase Elliott really has a knack for these style races. But instead this week you really chose some of the darker horses, I want to say. But legitimately, these guys do have a chance, because when you look at the odds, you would never believe, but Joey Logano is sitting somewhere like 1, 2, 3, 4, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 on the odds chart, right? Sitting right next to Alex Bowman and Joey Hand and Austin Cindric. Joey Logano is a Cup Series champion. A two-time Cup Series champion, right? And they've got him favored at 18. So
I kind of look at the finish order from last year, and then I look back further into the stages of where teams are performing. So in terms of, I want to point this out. Christopher Bell won both Stage 1 and Stage 2 and led the most laps despite finishing 18th in that race. Tyler Reddick was second and third in the stages, led only 8 laps, unfortunately, and had 28th place finish. SVG was third, fourth, and obviously the winner. And there is a favorite we could throw in there who finished in the top 10 in both stages. Highlight of that was a second place in Stage 2. He finished fourth in this race. I know Chris is kind of sick of him, but unfortunately we can't write him off. The talent is just there. The equipment is just there. Kyle Larson's got to be up there, and I'm sure he's up there in the Vegas odds.
For sure, he's second.
McDowell, I had to put him in there. Top 10 in both stages last year. He scored a top 10, finishing 7th. So I had to put him in there. Trying to think some other drivers to throw in. Martin Truex Jr. could sneak one in. I think he could be a contender in this one. He did finish for stage points last year, both stages actually.
And don't you feel like Martin Truex's confidence has been hit because he's probably been run out of his seat and not really just wanted to retire and step away? Do you kind of feel like that may be a jaded situation there for the rest of the year?
I think the pressure is there, but maybe it's really not. And Truex is just, I don't want to say Truex is that kind of guy, but I think Truex may be at the point of like, we're just going to keep going and let's have fun with it. I guess. Yeah. I don't really know.
I kind of feel like this is the situation with Rusty Wallace that Rusty Wallace was in. He didn't want to go anywhere else, but he wasn't really being told that he could stay where he was at. And I think that, when Truex looks back on it, he'll feel more like he got pushed out of his seat versus, even Matt Kenseth was pushed out of his seat. First of all, when the first thing you talk about is, I would do a part-time gig with somebody else, you kind of probably got run out of your seat. So I'm really going to have a tough time keeping Martin Truex Jr. on anything legitimate for the rest of the year because I feel like he's going to maybe have, I don't want to say piss poor attitude, but definitely a little bit of because he knows he basically got fired from that ride. But what about on that favorites list? Well, is the favorite list done? Because I guarantee Bell would probably be the guy that I would put on there on the favorite side.
Yep,
for the favorite list.
We have one spot open. We already have Reddick. We already have Bell. We already have SVG. And we already have Larson. For favorite, I don't know because you mentioned Chase Elliott, which, again, he hasn't asked for road courses. Obviously, he's won at COTA, which has, more stricter track limits than like Sonoma and Watkins Glen when we go to those tracks. So, I mean, that probably could play in a favor for him. I don't really know who I can really shoot the eye for in a favor other than him, in all honesty.
Hey, can you get statistics?
And Chase the Faith did finish third last year in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that says a lot. Let's Will Elliott into that then.
We still have one contender and two underdogs to throw in.
Buescher is definitely the better. He's the better road course racer. So, but we don't know. So it would be a toss-up between Keselowski or Buescher. But I believe RFK is a strong enough organization. They need to be represented on this list. Out of those two, which one would you circle to put on the contenders list?
Buescher, finishing 10th over Keselowski, who did a poor 24th place finish last year.
Is there a reason why he finished 24th?
Doesn't say it was for an accident or anything. If you look at both stages, neither one of the two finished in the top 10 in both stages. Just Buescher had a top 10 run and finished 10th. Out of the 37 cars that ran the Chicago race last year, only 34 finished the race running. The Dillon brothers, Ty and Austin, along with Alex Bowman, those three drivers DNF'd.
I like the idea of Gibbs being there. As we try to figure out the last, I believe it's the underdog, right?
Yep, we have 2 underdogs. I'm going to throw in, believe it or not, Chris, I am going to throw in the hat Noah Gragson for this one. And the 10 car for Stuart Haas last year finished 12th, and Noah Gragson had a top 25 finish. So I'm throwing in. So if you take those 2 numbers there, I will throw in Noah Gragson into the tip of the cap there.
Yeah, I was thinking more on the lines of Kyle Busch.
You know what? I'm okay with that. He struggled. We know the couple of struggles he had last year, and I know during the Chicago Street Course they had to deal with rain. And let me tell you, Kyle Busch had a love-hate relationship with those tire barriers to save him from the wall last year. But despite all that, he still walked away with a top 5 finish, finishing in 4th. And you know what? I'll throw him as an underdog for this one.
Well, it should lock us in.
And that does.
It's always fun to do Taz's Hot Picks, man. We always get to go through drivers. And something that we get to talk about every week, and others that are just specific for tracks that come up. This week is probably a little bit harder on Taz's Hot Picks, so don't be too hard on him if he misses some. It is kind of hard to call a race that's only been one ever. And it's not just the race, it's a racetrack, right? This is a road course. This is a street course, not a road course. You can't exceed the track limits at this type of racetrack that you could, typically a road course racetrack. So it's definitely going to be all eyes on the TV sets this weekend.
I think this week in Iowa are my 2 toughest ones to go for. Iowa being this year was the first time ever Cup has ever ran on that track. In Chicago, well, you can sit here and knock off your road course guys, but you have to sit here and think, what road course guys understand very tight corners and very tight track limits? I mean, you don't really have. I mean, your track limits is wall to wall. There is nothing else. It's not like a Sonoma. It's not like a Watkins Glen.
Right. Well, that will do it for our show. Man, we covered some topics here tonight. Condolences to Craig Moore and his family. We're not going to get into whatever's going on, but their family needs a little bit of prayer right now. Things are kind of up in the air about what's really going on over on that side, but our friends in Florida need our prayers, and we'll offer them. I hate that Miss Leeds wasn't able to catch the show on the backdrop, but I do appreciate all of our live listeners that are there with us weekly. Hopefully we put on a great show this week. And Taz, Heather, if you'll take it to the house.
All right. We want to thank everyone for listening live here on Blog Talk Radio. If you ever missed us live, check us out on any forms of podcast such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, you name it. You name it, we're more than likely on it. Just search the 110 Nation. You'll find not only our shows that happen Tuesday nights, but you'll also hear the 110 Nation Sports Show hosted by Mr. CJ Sports and Mario Edwards from Carolina Sports Plus. And you'll also hear the Thursday night shows hosted by Jared Hudson, known as Safety to Success. Also, make sure you go like our Facebook pages, Race Chat Live, and the 110 Nation Sports. Also, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel to catch clips of all of our shows if you don't want to listen to them live, or if it's the first time you've heard of us and you want to catch a glimpse of what we do and how our shows go. And with that being said, we'll see you at the same bat time, same bat place next Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 Central. This has been the Caution Flag of Racing Radio. Chris Creighton, I'm the Tasmanian Devil Flaggers, Taz Taylor, saying good night. We'll see y'all next week.
Good night, everybody. It's going to take me a minute to get the show logged out, but let's see. Now we're into the studio. I believe I just got a message from one of our listeners. Thanks for the show link. Glad to be able to tune in tonight. That was Ms. Rebecca Sears from up in the New York area. Thank you for listening to the show here tonight, and hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Reach out to us on Facebook, our Facebook page, Race Chat Live. Y'all have a great night.